Hi, folks. My name is Ray Weaver. I'm a singer-songwriter, political activist, and I am very, very excited to be talking to Boston Chris today. We go on a very long journey about songs, about writing, about politics, about family, and about life in general. I hope you hang around. Hope you have a listen, and I hope you enjoy it.
It's time to jive. It's time to mingle. It's time to see what everyone's drinking. It's time to jive. It's time to mingle. It's time to see what everyone's drinking. Until we all lose connection.
Hey guys, welcome to another fabulous episode of the Boston Chris podcast with yours truly, Boston Chris. And guys, we have a huge treat for you guys out there today. Another incredible award-winning songwriter all the way from the land of Scandinavia, Denmark to be specific. We have Ray Weaver on the show this week. Ray Weaver is an accomplished songwriter, a long history in the music business, and he writes songs from the heart. He tells stories. He talks about things that are important to him in his songs, including politics, racial divide, all kinds of other things. I'm going to read a little bit about him, and then we're going to get right into the episode with Ray. And of course, you're going to see not one, but two live, raw, uncut, acoustic versions of Ray Weaver songs, including the new single, The Blood Is Never on Their Hands, which you guys will want to check out. Trust me on that. But Ray Weaver is the consummate performer. His love of being in front of an audience is obvious at every show. His seemingly endless repertoire and ability to please any audience combines with his love for country, blues, rock and roll, the great Irish songs, his own stellar original tunes, and his unique take on modern chart hits to create a show audiences remember and come back to see again and again. His Take No Prisoners, Last Man Standing style has inspired rave reviews from the club owners and arrangers he plays for around the world. Along with his epic live performances, Ray Weaver is also an award-winning songwriter with the rare ability to transform life into songs and stories that are intensely personal, yet still touch a universal chord. Danish artist Jess Holtso chose to use only Ray Weaver songs for both of his English language CDs. The CDs and the songs, co-written with pianist and producer Morton Whitrock, received rave reviews from both the press and the public. The second Jess Holtso CD was nominated for a Danish Grammy Award and won Jess the Blues Personality of the Year Award from the Copenhagen Blues Society. He was also the co-writer of all the songs on the debut CD Watch Me by Nina Massara, which has received glowing reviews and charted on blues playlists worldwide. One of the songs was also recently featured on Fox Television's Lethal Weapon program. A Father's Heart, his first book, collects some of his best-loved stories and songs into a multimedia package. Ray has played concerts and festivals across the United States and in Europe. His music has been used on the Travel Channel, the WB Network, and featured on radio and internet stations worldwide. And Ray's books and music are available on iTunes, Amazon, CD Baby, and at every single live performance. Guys, we are super excited to bring to you the songwriter, the American troubadour, Ray Weaver, on the Boston Chris podcast. Y'all check it out.
Hey, this is Tony Arata. Thank you so much for tuning into the Boston Chris podcast.
Guys, it is the Boston Chris podcast with yours truly, Boston Chris, and this is a little bit of a different thing. It is almost 2 a.m. as I sit here in Northeast Texas, and we have Ray Weaver here, who is a mutual friend. We have a mutual friend named Cliff Doyle, who's been on the show, and Cliff turned me on to you, and you're in Denmark right now, which is why I'm interviewing you at 2 o'clock in the morning, because it's 9 o'clock where you are, right?
Exactly. It's just coming up on 9. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
so Cliff was like, how are we going to work this out, Boston? I was like, oh, it's simple. I'm a night owl. This is perfect. Just tell me the time difference and what time he's available for his time, and we'll make it work. And here we are. So Ray, the first thing we're going to do is you've performed a couple of songs and you've sent them in, and I'm really stoked the two that you chose to do because they are my two favorite on the record, the Confession record, and well the new song's not on that record, and that's the one we're going to talk about right now. This is the reason why you're on the show. Essentially, is the new single, "The Blood Is Never on Their Hands." For future's sake, we just went through an election here in the States, and we won't talk too much about that. We both probably share the same philosophy there. But this song is really, really, really relevant to the times that we are living in right now. And I just want to say that for chronicling's sake, in case somebody's watching this years and years and years from now, that this song right here is a massive message for what we're going through right now. Tell us about the song and how it came to be. Take us into the room when you're writing it.
Okay, well, I write with a guy from Denmark. His name is Rene Wolf. He's a really, really good melody writer, and Rene doesn't speak English very well, and he's not really what you would call a singer. So he'll send me a basic, very basic acoustic guitar track, very basic, and he'll make sounds where he thinks there should be words, where he thinks that the lyrics should be, or what. And we've done that on a few songs. He sent me this one, and it was in a minor key, which is unusual for him. He usually likes to work these really positive, upbeat things. He's a very upbeat guy. So he sent me this, and I was just, I was listening around, and I had it on, I was playing, and in the background over there, my Alexa was talking to me about the war in the Middle East, and it was talking to me about Ukraine, and it was talking to me about, and I listened to a lot of news programs. I try to get a balance, even the ones I don't agree with. I try to hear what's going on over there.
Same.
And
yep.
Basically, it was just, I got angry. I got angry. I'm hearing about, what's going on in Gaza. I'm hearing about what's going on in Israel. I'm hearing what's going on in Ukraine and other parts of the world that don't get as much recognition in the States, because there's a lot of other conflicts and wars going on around the world.
Yep.
And the thing I thought was, the people that set this stuff up, I can't remember who said it, but the truth of the matter is that old men start wars and young men die in them. And I thought, the blood is never on their hands.
Yep.
They don't
so
pay
true.
for it.
It's so true.
They don't pay for it, And so you look at the devastation. You look at the pictures coming from all over the world, and I'm just thinking, I cannot, especially, I guess, being an American and having European roots and living in Europe, I never thought in my lifetime, and I'll be 69 and here in a couple of days, I never thought I'd see another ground war in Europe. I never thought I would see that again. I thought we got smarter, but apparently we didn't. Apparently we didn't. And our friends and people that live in the Middle East and live in other parts of the world, in India, Pakistan, all that, they've dealt with this forever. And it just seemed so, I just felt so, what someone has to say that, yeah, we just had an election, but, without getting conspiracy theorists and all the other thing, Chris, this stuff goes even higher than that.
Absolutely.
And longer than
of
that,
course.
and further back than that.
And they say that the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, right? So
it's exactly, yeah.
And that's the way it is. Humans have been fighting wars over the same things for millennia. And
we are tribal.
Yep, you make a good point of ground wars in Europe. I never thought I would see that ever again either. But again, it's in human nature to always fight over the same things. And it's generational, it's passed down. And unfortunately, somebody has to come along and put an end to it and rise above it. And I don't know if that'll happen in our lifetime or not,
I don't know either, especially with what's going on now. But the one thing that I was very careful, or I tried to be very careful in the song, was there is no, I don't think, and you've heard it a lot, I don't think there's finger pointing on either side.
There's not, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about with this song. There's a lot of vagary in it, and it's very, it feels like deliberate vagary, and I hope you know what I mean by vagary. Trying to be neutral while also spreading a message that needs to be spread. You're not pointing fingers at the left or the right or whoever, or Russia or Israel or whoever is in
No.
You know, I mean, everybody has their own hot button person or party or whatever that's at fault. And I love the fact that you stayed neutral and used vagaries in this song, because it becomes more relevant to more people that way, you know?
It was very purposeful, and the thing is, I mean, I've gotten some flack for it. I've gotten some
course
flack
you
from
have.
people saying, "Well,
Absolutely.
you didn't take a side." I said, "Well, my side is, as I said, war is fundamentally stupid. War is wrong. War kills innocent people. Don't care. I mean, and I have my own feelings about it. Of course I do. I know what my side is on this, but that's not important to the message. That, to me, that's not, I talked about the thing with Renee and the little melody that he sent me, the chorus part, the shine a light part wasn't there when I first finished the song, or when I thought I was finished the song. And then I played the song for the basic acoustic version for my two children, and my children are both excellent musicians and excellent songwriters, and both of them said, "Well, it's not done, Dad. It's not done. You don't have a melody resolution. You don't have that thing that you should have in a song where, like, if the verses are very staccato, like this song is, then when the chorus, you need some stretched out notes and some places to really sing." I'm not a great vocalist for that kind of thing, and so I wanted that. The whole point is, it talks about men in the shadows of dark places, and so the chorus is shine a light. Just shine a light on these people, expose them, talk about them, So it was really purposefully, and as I said, I could flack about it. Why didn't you this, and why did, finger pointing at this point doesn't do any good.
Well, those people, I
know.
feel like if people are trying to give you flack for not picking a side in art, right? It's art, first of all. I mean, we're talking about art here. I mean, let's
exactly.
That's the first.
That's
thing.
very wise.
Of course,
that's very wise, Chris. I mean, when you go to a museum, I mean, you see Guernica or you see whatever it is you might see. Yeah, I mean, the message is very clear there. When you see that painting or you see something, the message is very clear. But it's not a manifesto. There's nothing printed down at the bottom that says this is about this.
Oh man, this is going to be a great interview. We haven't even introduced the song yet. The song hasn't played yet, and we're already talking about really deep stuff. And I'm excited about this one, man. Cliff, thank you so much for this. And but anyway, guys, the song is "The Blood Is Never on Their Hands." Check it out. This is live, unplugged, right here on the Boston Chris podcast from Ray Weaver.
Crawling through the wreckage of her shattered home, a mother searches for her son. It was just a quiet Sunday. She never heard the drum. Now her whole world is gone. Men in the shadows of high places send out their heartless commands, but they don't live with the consequences, and the blood is never on their hands. Through centuries of pain, we've cried these tears before. It seems we never learn. We just pick up their weapons, fight their endless wars, and watch our whole world burn. Men in the shadows of high places send out their heartless commands. They never live with the consequences. The blood, it's never on their hands. Shine a light so the whole world can see. Shine a light Only peace will set us free. Men in the shadows of high places, sending out their reckless commands. They never dare to show their faces, and the blood, it's never on their hands. Shine a light so the whole world can see. Shine a light. Only peace will set us free. Shine a light. Shine a light. Shine a light. Only peace will set us free.
All right, so we are back. Once again, we have Ray Weaver on the show, and typically we don't ask a whole lot of questions before the first song is played because I have kind of a icebreaker question, and typically that's asked within 45 seconds of the beginning of the episode. But I'm still going to ask it because it's part of the theme song, and I'm almost contractual at this point to ask it. What are your favorite drinks right now, Ray?
One of my favorite drinks. That's interesting. I don't drink a lot because I have a history with that, but we won't get boring with that. But my very favorite drink at this point in time is my morning coffee, which I generally share with my wife. And I like, on occasion, if we're out for a really, really good meal, or if we're traveling, or especially if we go to Italy or something, I like a glass of red wine, and I leave it to that these days.
I love that. Coffee is one of the top picks as favorite drink from guests of this show, and I always have to add my 2 cents to that. I'm 47 years old. I started drinking coffee at 46.
Oh wow! Congratulations.
So I joined the train late, but I am full speed ahead at this point, right? I don't drink like 4 or 5 glasses a day. I have 1 cup in the morning, and it's iced coffee. I love my iced coffee. And I just like the fact that I can wake up, have my coffee, and then I'm not like in a rush to eat or have breakfast or whatever. I can fast a little bit longer, get into the afternoon before I really need to eat anything,
That's why, my son, as I mentioned him before, and my wife, they're a little bit more connoisseurs than I am. They have one of those pots, you put it on the stove and then it bubbles up and all. I'm not quite. I mean, I'll get up in the morning and I'll just do my 2 scoops of instant and get some hot water in there, and then that's my. But I'm not sure, but I do know that having lived in Europe all these years, the coffee culture here in the different parts of Europe, Spain, and Italy and stuff. And even here in Scandinavia, especially, it's like they're crazy, man. I mean, it's like for every Starbucks you guys have, we've got Starbucks and Espresso House, and then it is.
So we have all of that now too. Like we have all of
really,
these, no, we have all of these mom and pops now that are all trying to get a piece of the pie. I live in a small town called Mineola, and man, I think we have a Starbucks. We have at least 4 other coffee shops. And by and large, the area here is elderly. It's senior citizens. So, like, you go on social media every time there's a new building being built, and they're like, probably another coffee shop. Like, we need another one of them. Anyway.
I'd probably fit in just fine.
Yeah, social media is a trip around here. Let me tell you what.
It's funny because you mentioned just getting started, and that's why that's so funny to me. I mean, I'm trying to picture way back when I was still living in the States, and when I was a kid in my grandfather's farm in Maryland. with a big old coffee urn that just got filled up first thing in the morning. And we started, 12, 13 years old, you start drinking coffee because you're up in the morning working at farm stuff. And I'm trying to picture him, with these 1 penny, 2 penny, each cup of coffee it probably cost, looking at a $4 or $5 cup of coffee, what the old man would think,
I don't know how I survived, man. Like, I went to school full time, and then I worked full time after school
Wow.
from 13 till I graduated. So, like, I'm at school 7 to 3, then I worked 3:30 to 9, and I didn't drink coffee through all of that. Like,
I can't imagine.
Like, I'm looking back at that, and I'm like, what? How did I do that? So yeah, let's talk about your upbringing. So you were born and raised in Maryland?
I'm a Maryland boy, born and raised. I was born I lived in a small town between Baltimore and Annapolis called Pasadena, just a little farming community. And my grandfather had a pig farm up on what was called It's funny. It's called Mountain Road, and there's no mountains within, I don't know, maybe good 2-3 hours, but it was called Mountain Road.
I guess eventually, in Texas, man. Let me tell you.
I guess eventually it got to a mountain back in the old days, and we had a small family farm there, apples, corn, pigs, and the whole thing. Grew up there and grew up on the water, grew up crabbing and fishing in that area. And, it was a good upbringing. My dad moved away from the farm, and we lived about 25, maybe not even that long, maybe 15 minutes away from my grandparents. My dad went to work for General Motors, the Electric Motors division, when manufacturing was still booming on the on the East Coast of the U.S. And so grew up there and stayed there until I decided to become a famous rock star. And and then, I actually got into radio. I always had the two things. I was always doing music. I probably got a late start compared to most people, but I did music and I did radio, and I moved away from my first radio job when I was 18.
Well, what does a late start look like? Because when you become what you are now, which is essentially a songwriter and a troubadour and a storyteller, that starts somewhere, and it has to come from the cosmos somewhere. So what were those first memories like that you're introduced to music?
I was a writer first. I wrote first, not songs and not music so much as I wrote. I always loved to read. I was the quintessential classic nerd when I was in school. I loved to read and loved to write. My first poems, I guess, of some sort, were first, second grade, that kind of stuff. And I stuck with that. And then the Beatles came, and I saw I had a guitar. My parents were big music fans, big country music fans, big Elvis fans. So we had guitars and stuff around. I never really bothered with them until I saw the Beatles. I saw the Beatles in 64. God, I'm old. I saw the Beatles in 64 and on TV, and I loved it. It's okay. I went from wanting to replace Brooks Robinson at third base on the Baltimore Orioles to doing that. But even at that, it was kind of like, I picked up the guitar and went, well, this is really hard. This is not easy to do. And so I kind of toyed with it for a little while, stuck to being, and then I decided, okay, I was going to be a lead guitar player. And I started focusing on that very much. And we were in a few bands, my cousin and I call him my brother because he lived with us, but we were in a few bands together. And then he came to me one day, and we had a gig playing, and you'll appreciate this being where you are. We had a gig playing a cotillion, a debutante ball, with this little rock and roll band we had playing, Deep Purple or whatever the hell we were playing at the time, And he said, the lead singer quit. You're the new lead singer. And I'm like, I can't sing.
Like, I don't sing. I'm the poem writer. Where have you been?
Exactly. He said, but you're the only one that knows the words to this stuff. So, that's basically, I guess we were in our early teens, maybe 12, 13 years old. And that's when it really started to be, okay, I'm a singer and I play. And I kind of dropped a little bit the lead guitar portion of it all, and then focused on the poet part of it. And of course, in that process in there, Boston, I heard Bob Dylan. So everything kind of went, oh, you can do that.
Yeah.
You can sound like that, and you can still make records, So,
man, uniqueness is where it's at when it comes to songwriting. And sometimes you don't realize that at a young age, because especially if you're not coming from music, right? Like, There's nobody above
I had a
you.
musical family. I don't get me wrong. All of my mom's family, I have a really deep Irish roots, and all of my mom's family were very musical.
Okay.
All of them played, some of them professionally. No one on my dad's side of the family, which is the one we were closest to because we lived in, the U.S. and we lived in. No one played music until my cousin and I, my brother and I, we started doing it. And so even though the music was in there and my parents loved music, took us to endless local country music concerts and bluegrass, especially bluegrass concerts. No one really picked and no one really thought about it. I come from that. You'll get this. I come from that background where that's really cool. And I admire people that do that. But in lower middle class, life, that's really for other people, Ray. That's not really for you. You need to,
music's expensive too.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Especially when you're first starting out.
My dad was so, we had no real disposable income. I didn't even know what the hell that was. And so, my dad and my mom both were very, very, I'm very lucky. And I've told my parents before they passed away, both of them, I said, you guys are the reason that I'm not successful in this business, because all of the successful musicians I know, their parents were terrible, didn't support them. You guys were great, and you supported me all the way. So it's your fault that I didn't make it, because I should have had this horrible story to tell about how bad my life was. And I just didn't.
I would blame Bob Dylan too, because
well, I do. I blame him. My dad did. Let me tell you.
Because my God, dad, when your influence is the Beatles, and then you switch to Bob Dylan, right? Like
my dad expected me to, continue with the baseball thing, and he was kind of like, you're a pretty good baseball player. You're pretty good, and we could do this, we could do that. And then I heard Dylan, and then all of that stuff started flowing, and I'm like, nah, I don't think so.
Well,
I don't think so.
Just for comparison's sake, I have been a singer and I have been a third baseman, and singing is much easier.
Much easier. It's much easier. Well, that's the thing. I wanted to be a third baseman, but I met, this goes back a whole 1,000 million years ago, but I met Andy Etchebarren, who was the catcher for the Baltimore Orioles at the time when I was a kid. And he convinced me to come to one of his camps, and with my body type at the time, believe it or not, size I am now as a really small kid. And he was like, you'd be a good catcher. So I switched over to that. And that's where, like some idea of being good at this might happen. But it was just, I didn't have, just like with music, once I totally committed myself to it, I did. But with baseball or any kind of thing, you have to commit to it totally, and I just didn't.
You have to have something too that sometimes you can't get better at, and that's just talent, right?
Yeah.
Like for me,
I couldn't hit.
Yeah, for me, very similar to you. I was a catcher. I played all over the place, all-star on every team I was ever on. Mm-hmm. And then when I got to high school, I learned about breaking balls. And I was like, wait a minute, you mean the balls don't come in at you straight anymore in high school?
You and I could write our story together, man, and we just swap lines. That's exactly it. I'm standing there going, what the hell happened to that? Where was it? It was just right
exactly. There. I was like, man, I'll tell you what, dude, those curveballs and sliders and changeups, man, they look like the balls were as big as beach balls. And you swing from the tip of your toes, boy, and you don't come up with nothing but air.
It's air. It's just it's gone.
And then you look back at the catcher like it's his fault, right? Like, I was going to send that one to the next county, and you just pulled the string on it. Man. Yeah. It was just right there.
That's great.
So,
that's great.
I mean, in my 40s, I don't know if I could still do it now, but as of a couple of years ago, I could still hit fastballs in above 90 miles an hour.
Wow. I don't know if I can do that. Bro.
So my kids would always say, Dad, how come you never became a baseball or a baseball player? I'd say, switch it to curveball and see what happens to me. Yeah, because I couldn't hit a curveball. That's just the way it was,
Me neither,
man.
my friend. Me neither, my friend. Not at all. Not at all.
But yeah, that's why very quickly baseball will humble you. That's for dang sure.
That's a good word for it. That's a good word.
I mean, you can work your butt off and be the biggest work ethic person in the game. And if you can't hit, then there's just no reason to even, it just doesn't matter. You can't create a hit tool if it doesn't already exist.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
I love talking baseball, man. You and I are going to get along
too, man.
after we do this. So again, now you're just like, okay, I love the Beatles. I want to be a lead guitar player. Now I've
Yeah.
found Bob Dylan, and you know what? I'm pretty unique vocally as well. I bet you
Hmm.
I could do this instead of guitar playing. So
Yeah.
what's that process like now? Because at some point in time, you know, you're playing in these bands and stuff like
Hmm.
that, but it's going to become more serious for you at some point.
Hmm. Hmm.
What's that like? Because that's usually an epiphany for a musician, right?
It really was. That's a good word for it. I mean, I was in high school by this point, and I was in some pretty good local bands, and we were like a lot of the bands at the time. The best one was kind of like a power trio thing where I was playing lead guitar and singing songs, and good drummer, good bass player, and I mean, I found myself more and more attracted to not necessarily the softer side of things, but the more thoughtful side of things. And it was kind of like I started to hear Jackson Brown. I mean, that's a major influence on me,
Love
music. Or
that.
Jackson in 71, 72. Started hearing his stuff and the folk music stuff. The folk music stuff from Bleecker Street and Greenwich Village and all that stuff. On the East Coast, it was ubiquitous. You really couldn't get away from it.
Hmm.
It was just, even if it wasn't on the charts, you heard it. But more like Jackson, and then in 1973, 74, I heard the Eagles. I'd already been interested in country rock music with Graham Parsons and Burrito Brothers and the Byrds. I was a big Byrds fan. As much as I was a Beatles fan, I was a Byrds fan. And I liked that more acoustic. It's amazing. It's funny. You were talking about the things you just can't do. Probably the thing I love the most in music is excellent harmony singing, and I can't sing harmony at all. I
Hmm.
mean, it's just not my thing. I'm a lead vocalist. My brain is always going to default to the lead line. But I started hearing this music, and again, not necessarily because it was softer, but because it was more thoughtful. I mean, and so
More vulnerable, right?
yeah, I started doing something that the great Richard Thompson and a few other people said was just it's insanity. I just decided that I could literally stand in front of people with just an acoustic guitar and keep them in entertained.
I love that.
And I just thought, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try it. And I went through all of the things you go through when you do that. Whereas at first you're, like the first couple of gigs, boy, that went really well. And then you have a gig where nobody even looks in your direction, and
Hmm.
you're like, okay, I'm going to go
Yeah,
back to
I
the
call
band.
that the bard life, right? Like
Yeah,
it's the
yeah.
bard life, and you have to take the good with the bad because
Hmm.
it's really hard on your mental health.
Oh,
I've freaking talked to a lot of people who are living the bard life. They're not in a full
yeah,
band. They're just out on the road with them and their guitar. There's nobody to
yeah.
argue with. There's nobody else to blame. It's just
Nope.
you and your guitar. And
Yeah,
and if you walk into a room and nobody shows up, that's on you. And that
that's
can be
right.
very tough on your psyche, especially when you're
That's
an
right.
artist.
Yeah,
The bard life is tough, man.
yeah. I'm lucky that I do. I mean, I've had, during after I made that commitment, I had a really really good country rock band for a lot of years called the Last Chance Band in the Baltimore, Washington area, and we were quite good and quite well respected. I mean, I've always been one of those guys who went, okay, I'm not a great guitarist. I'm not a great singer. What am I always, it was, I surrounded myself with better musicians than myself. I always said, got to have guys that are better than me because that just elevates my work all the time. And I've stuck to that. But I kind of like, developing this band, of course, and we played a lot of covers and we played a lot of clubs to make money. Over here was Ray doing the solo stuff. And I've had those gigs that you're talking about. I mean, I did a hometown gig not that long ago. I would say maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And we're talking about a hometown gig where I know everybody. And I expected, and 7 people showed up.
Hmm.
Seven
Hmm.
people showed up in a 60-seat room. And you know what? I played the gig.
Yep.
I played the gig.
And
You play the gig.
the fact of the matter is, the people who know you the best are sometimes the ones that don't show up. That's just the way it is.
Exactly.
I mean, with even what I'm doing with podcasting, interviewing, all of that stuff. I mean, the people who love me the most are tired of this stuff, and I get that. Like, I understand it. Believe me. I mean, I'm trying to reach people who don't know me. You know what I mean?
That is so important because I mean, I put this song out we're talking about, and I think all of my Facebook friends and maybe even you got a little tired, especially in the first couple of weeks of me promoting it. But the point is, this because you work with indie artists. We got nobody else.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have this machine behind. So you do this, and I mean, hell, I got tired of seeing it myself.
Yep.
I mean, I really got.
Hey,
I got tired of.
I put a lot of stuff out. I'm the
Yeah.
first to admit it. I get people who tell me all the time, I see your stuff every day, and I'm like, good. That's the
Good.
point. That's the point. Like, I want you
Yeah.
to see it. That's kind of the deal. Like, I'm just like you, Ray. I'm completely independent. I'm not.
Yeah, you're working by yourself.
Not
You're
making
doing
any money doing this. Just doing it because I
No.
love talking to people. I love trying to talk about music and what makes people tick. Sure, I might get some YouTube ad money every 5th month or whatever. It's like maybe $90 every 5 months or whatever it is. That's not money. That's not enough to work for. But
No.
but it's completely independent. Nobody else is sharing my stuff from me. Nobody's creating the posts. I'm sure it's
No.
very much like what you're
No.
doing as well.
It's all I do, man. Yeah. it's all
And
I
of
do.
course, the entire world and all the algorithms are working against us. So we have to,
Absolutely.
we have to work harder than the algorithms, and that's really hard to do, for sure.
I still get excited though when I'm looking at the stats maybe and like this song's done well streaming wise. I mean it's not gone viral or broken any banks, but it's done better than anything I've ever done before. And when I see a listener in Finland or when I see that I've gotten streams in Spain or whatever, I get excited. I'm like, these people don't know me.
And you should.
They like the song.
Yeah,
they like
should.
the song. That means a lot. I mean, I know, of course, as an artist, I know the break point of, okay, this 1,000 people here, these are all people that I know. These are all people that have seen me perform. But once we start to get 2, 3, I don't know who these people are, and they like the song, and and that's the work. That's what makes
that's
it.
a different kind of success, and some people would say that is the penultimate success. Honestly,
That for me it is.
Yeah.
I'll
tell you the
it
truth.
means a lot to me.
I got some advice years ago when I first started live streaming. I streamed video games live, and I made a pretty good living
okay.
at it for a while. But when you start doing something like that, you're literally talking to an empty room for a really, really long time. You start with one viewer, and that one viewer is me, right? So
Yeah.
when you see that number go up to 2, that's pretty exciting. It's like, oh my gosh, I got a second viewer. What's happening right now? Like somebody's watching me. So I would get excited about that, which is the wrong thing to do when you're in that business. You don't want to call somebody out for the number going up because they immediately leave every single time. Right? So the advice I got will never, ever pay your bills. But the advice I got was never pay attention to the people who aren't watching you. Always pay attention to the people who are. So
That's interesting. I like that.
You
I
talk
like
to the room because you're talking to the people who are in the room, not the people who aren't in the room. So, don't get upset because people didn't show up. Be excited for the people who did show up. And I've always kind of worked on that premise ever since. And honestly, that's why I never got excited when I went from 3 viewers to 200 viewers, right? I just treated it the same because
My son was big when he was young, and probably still is. I don't know, but he used to love to watch you guys do the video game stuff, and I'd be. My studio here is right next to my bedroom, and this used to be his bedroom, and I would hear him all night long watching you guys do. And I said to him, I said, "You watch guys play video games?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "And that's interesting." And he tried. He said, "Yeah." And then the more I learned about it, I mean, there's a great Danish competitive team. I can't remember which game it is, but Astralis. And then I went with him to a couple events. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like going to a football game.
So
to
first of
watch
all, you
this-
are an incredible dad just for asking
really?
him. Instead of just judging that, you wanted to know more, and I love that.
Yeah.
You're an amazing dad. I know that already just by that.
My kids, I was lucky, very fortunate. My dad was a working class guy, as I said. I mean, he didn't, by any stretch of the imagination, understand the stuff I did, the earrings and the long hair at the time. And I actually did, the whole thing. But, I mean, we had our battles over the years, no question about it. But my dad was never one to dismiss any interest out of hand. You
Mhm.
know, and I was, of course, as a young man, you know, Boston, I was not aware of how special that was at the time.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, he indulged the guitar playing, and he indulged the, you know, getting up from the kitchen table because I had to write something down, and you know, I never got how important that was. And then when I got older, I was like, okay, I've always, you know, I've always been, I sort of the same way with my kids my dad was supportive, but my dad was not particularly a hands-on kind of, I think you should do this kind of guy.
Right.
He was pretty much even when I got older and I would ask him, hey dad, I'm like, you know, 17 and I got offered this job in Virginia to be on the radio. What do you think I should do? And my dad would be the first person to say, you know what? I'm not much on telling people how to live their own lives. You got to follow your heart. He was always big on, what do you think?
Silent
You know,
support.
what do you think?
Silent
Yeah,
support.
the answer.
Yeah.
And then he would drove me all the way down there and help me set up my first apartment, my first flat down there. I mean, so it was that kind of thing where there was never, you know, the one story that I tell in my show about that is I got in between bands and stuff when I was younger, early 20s. You know, I got, you know how musicians are. We were in between bands, in between gigs. So I got a temporary job working at a company in Baltimore. It was a good company, and I got a temp job there through a temporary agency. Well, very long story short, they liked what I did, you know, and they came to me and they said, you know how to be on time. We'd like to offer you a full-time job. And again, early 20s, and you know, we'd like to offer you a full-time job. And they went down the pay, which was pretty good. And mostly in, you know, living in the US, you get this, the benefits, the health insurance, all of that stuff, you know, and they ran it down, and it looked good, man. It looked good. And I went home and asked my dad about it. I said, you know, what should I do, man? I said, this is getting, you know, my dad's like, you know, that's good money and it's a good job. He said, and you're going to work at that for a couple years or whatever, and maybe meet a girl and you have a couple of kids, and, you know, you have all of that. You have a good life. He said, I'm never going to tell a man to turn down a good job.
I
Never
love
going to do
that.
that. He said, but you always want to do something with this music thing. He said, and I'm going to tell you right now, if you take that job and you get a couple of kids and get a wife and you get this, you get that, you're not going to do that music thing. You're just not going to do it. You're not going to have time. And my dad was never the one to say that he had any aspirations beyond what he turned out to be doing and have a good life. But that moment in time, I realized that one time he did.
Mhm.
One time he did. And then when he was a very young man, just out of the military, I came along. And whatever those aspirations might have been, and as I got older, I realized he wanted to be an artisan. He wanted to be a real carpenter, he wanted to be an artisan.
Yeah.
But, you know, he couldn't do that. He had to get that job at GM. And so his way of saying it was like, you know, never gonna, but you want to do some of that music thing. If you take this job, you'll have a good life, but it won't be the life you've always talked about. And that was the kind of advice he would give.
That's a great lesson too, because like, you know, he's gonna understand both sides of a coin better than you would, perhaps. And
Oh, sure.
you know,
Oh, sure.
if the head side of the coin looks like the way to go, and the tail side of the coin just looks like an awful idea, sometimes you need somebody who's lived both sides of that coin to explain
Exactly.
why the tail side is not quite as bad as you think it is, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But I love that
exactly.
you are able to take from those lessons from your dad and then see something that your own children are doing, and perhaps something you don't understand all that well, and just not dismissing it out of hand like a lot of people would. I can't tell you how often, as a grown man in the streaming content creation industry, that everything, I'm judged so much by it. You know, get a real job, go do this. What are you doing? Get off your ass. Well, I've heard it all.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
But
yeah.
for you to not dismiss that out of hand, and not only that, not judging, but also wanting to learn more. I mean, that's a great thing that you learned from your dad, and you pass that down to your own kids as well. So kudos on that.
I appreciate that, but it just seemed the most natural thing that worked, because you just put your finger right on it. I mean, content creator, musician. I mean, I can't even count the times in my life, and I don't care anymore. Like I said, I'm, you know, approaching 70 here. I don't care anymore. I mean, people said to me, "Well, okay, you play guitar and sing, but what do you do for a living?"
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
Yep.
I'm a singer songwriter. yeah, but what do you do? What's your job?
Right.
It's like, well, yeah, I'm a singer. You know, it's like, you know, and I stopped kind of worrying a long time ago about that. I've always, and that's that, you know, again, back to my dad and my mom, you know, my dad was very clear and my mom's like, we don't, how you make your living, as long as it's legal, it doesn't matter to us as long as you support yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And by hook or by crook, and sometimes, as you know, my friend, there have been some very lean years.
Absolutely.
I've managed to make it through. You know, I've had to take side jobs. I worked in radio. I did a lot of right now, even though, you know, I do a lot of audio work. I do voiceovers and stuff and audio books and stuff.
All on
But
my list of notes.
It's all stuff that I do, you know, just to keep it coming in, just to keep.
And so you understand the life. You just have to. Sometimes you just have to throw stuff against the wall, see what sticks, and then whatever sticks, you want to apply a little more glue to that and make sure it sticks longer. That's kind of
it's a good way to put it.
Yeah, that's kind of what content creation is like for me. Like, you know, I'm disabled, so I'm not really able to get a real job. So a lot of what I do is supplemental income. You know, $20 here, $60 there, whatever. But I'm trying all kinds of stuff. I do, you know, amateur audiobooks. I do ASMR. I do video gaming. I do podcasting. I do interviewing. So I'm just trying to do things that I think people will be interested in, and maybe bring a little bit more money in, even if it's only $50 here and $30 there or whatever. You know, the hope is something will take off, and then I can make the glue stick a little more to that one thing that takes off. You know,
well, you strike me as a fellow that understands that sometimes that $50 is a lot of money.
Damn
at
straight.
That moment in that time.
Well, yeah,
that 50 for me, $50 is a lot of money. I mean, I was born in 1955, so anybody tells me they're going to pay me $50 or something, I'm like, okay, that's fine.
And you learn how to spend it better too.
Exactly, you know? Exactly, you do. That $50 can go a long way, bro.
Right.
And
that's
so,
right.
I mean, you know, first year as a songwriter in Nashville, when I went to Nashville to really try to make it as a songwriter, I mean, you know, when I wasn't living in my car, pretty much, I was living in places that I prefer to not remember, going through the couch cushions and going through my jackets, everything, looking for enough money to put together to go down to 7-Eleven.
My God, we've all dealt with those years, that's for sure.
So, you know, it's like I tell my wife all the time, and sometimes, you know, my wife is Danish, so coming from a different culture, which is a little bit more supportive of people. I tell my wife, anything is better than drawing a zero. If they're going to pay me a little bit of money and that's not a zero that day, then that's, you know, and she's like, oh, that's a lot of time. And I'm like, yeah. But I just, you know, I really have a hard time, no matter what the amount, leaving money on the table. If someone puts money on the table, I've learned to manage my energy better than I used to when I was young. But I mean,
man, Ray, I can't tell you some of the crazy things I've done for $1 on my freaking Twitch streams, man.
Maybe that's another podcast, bro.
It could be. Yeah,
stuff we shouldn't talk about. Podcast.
Oh my gosh, I can't tell you, dude. Like, we've done pies to the face and mystery meats and drinking streams. We did this one thing. I know this is getting sidetracked, but I promise.
That's fine, man. That's what
the last one. But yeah, I come up with this idea where people could donate, right? And they would donate $5, and they would pick a number between, say, 1 and 60, right? And so what we would do beforehand is my wife went to the grocery store and she bought 60 different cans of food, right? And then she took the labels off of the cans and she put a number on each one. Okay? And so then we did the stream. And again, all they had to do was donate $5, and then they got to pick a can between 1 and 60. And whatever that can was, that the number coincided with the can, she would open that can and take a teaspoon of whatever was in it and put it in the blender. And then another person would donate $5. We sold 32 of those cans that night.
Oh my gosh.
And so she blended 32 different things into the blender, and then I had to drink it.
That's hysterical.
Yep.
That is a brilliant.
Like I said, Ray, I would do anything for $1.
You know what? I think you may have outdistanced me there, buddy. You may have
I
taken
mean,
it.
she had like bamboo shoots and like
Oh,
rigatoni and like it was. She kept a note of all the like the 32 different things that were in the blender,
oh
and
my
so what I
gosh.
did, and because I have a really weak stomach, right, a really weak stomach, so
It doesn't sound like it to
well,
me.
I knew I was gonna puke, right? If I wasn't in character. So what I did is I went into character, and I have
Ah,
this
I
like
got you.
professional wrestler character that everybody calls beast mode. And
I got
so
you. I
all
got
I
you.
did was I drank it and I just no sold it. Like I acted like I didn't drink anything. It was all, I don't know, method acting or whatever it was, but like it didn't faze me at all. My wife, I was even licking it off my fingers and stuff, and my wife was gagging next to me. And like she has the strongest stomach of anybody I know. I was so proud
You
of
are
myself.
wild, man.
Yeah, it
You
was
are
fun.
wild.
But
That
so
is great.
let's get back on track. You talked about going to
Okay.
Nashville, and
Yeah.
you know, I've known about the Nashville way of life since I was very very young. I had a good friend of mine
Sure.
from the New England area that was always trying to make it in Nashville as well. And so
Mm-hmm.
you're also from the Northeast. Maryland's a little
Yep.
south of New England. But your genre doesn't really line up either. You're kind of doing a rock thing. You're more into
Yep.
folk than really country. So what
Yep.
was the method behind going to Nashville?
That's a great question. I mean, of course, I've always loved country music too. The classic stuff, Cash and Willie Nelson, and especially the later folks that worked in the country rock thing. And it was kind of like, okay, I want to do music, and it's funny because maybe some people don't have these watershed moments like I did. I'd always been, as I said, a singer songwriter or a writer for a band. I'd always done stuff for myself,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a moment where Glenn Campbell um, did an album, and he was on some daytime talk show. I don't know, Mike Douglas or something, and he was talking about this album that he had just done, and he said all the songs on the album. He sang a song called "Can You Fool," which I thought was a great song, and it still is a great song. And he mentioned that all of the songs on this album were written by a fellow named Michael Smotherman.
Oh my
Um,
God, yeah.
and I was like, wait a minute, he didn't write those songs?
Mm-hmm.
There's another guy that wrote these songs, and then he sings them. And it was literally like a light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, okay, I knew that in the folk music genre, every once in a while, Tom Rush would do a Jackson Brown song or a Joni Mitchell song, or, these guys he would cover the other writers that were in the genre. Tom was really good at doing that and picking up new writers before anybody had ever heard of him before.
Yeah.
I mean, he was writing Jackson songs before Jackson even had a deal. So I was like, wait a minute. And then found out all of this stuff is coming out of Nashville. This is where they're doing this. There's people down there that get paid to write songs. Like, and then I discovered a person who's probably a big mentor to me in a lot of ways, Tom T. Hall, because he was also a radio guy and he wrote
Mm-hmm.
songs. And then, of course, Christopherson. And then it was like, okay, I'm going to go do that. And Nashville is funny this way. I have a lot of friends in Nashville. A lot
I
of
love
friends.
just a real quick, just a side note. I
Yeah.
love how you mentioned Tom T. Hall and Christopherson,
Yeah.
two people who were
Yeah.
not known as being vocal powerhouses either, right?
No, they're not great singers. No,
Right.
no, and that was a big part of it. It was like, I heard them and I went, okay, cool. And I got down there. Nashville's funny. Like I said, I have a lot of friends in Nashville that make a good living writing songs, and they're very good at it. But Nashville will do this to you. They're like, we love what you do. We love what you do. You mentioned, we like your folk influence. We like your folk rock influence. We like that. We like that. But how about doing it this way?
Mm-hmm.
Immediately.
I love what you
It's
do,
kind
but
of,
let's see if we can't change it, right?
yeah, exactly. So I had a couple of publishing deals, and I had one that basically for a good 5 years just destroyed my career at the peak of what I should be doing because I was with a bad publisher. We won't go into that because it's legal shit. We won't go into all of that, but sorry about that.
That's
Shouldn't say
okay.
that on
That's
the
okay.
podcast. So but what I discovered was, and again, I have to be real careful here because I admire people who do what they do. I am never going to, you will never hear me in any context denigrate another artist. It may not be what I like, but obviously 40 million people like this. I don't know why, but more power to them. So the folks that are down there writing in what people call bro country or this kind of country or that kind of country might not be my cup of meat, as Bob Dylan would say, but somebody likes it. So they, you know, God love them. But I realized, especially about, I guess it's been a while back now, but I realized that it was not me. I came to Denmark for the first time in 1995, and I had a publishing deal. And I came here to play, and I met my wife. But, you know, I went back, met with my publisher at the time. We were supposed to do a project on me as an artist. I took him the 10 songs or 8 songs, whatever, that I had written. And then he had picked up 5 or 6 other things from the publishing catalog, and nothing matched. Boston, nothing matched. We realized we weren't on the same page. You know, I mean, you know, and Nashville's tough. I mean, I've had a lot of meetings when I was young, and, you know, maybe a little easier in the eyes than I am now, where people said, yeah, you're really good, man, but we got like 19 more just like you out there in the tree. You know, what's your thing? And I kept thinking, you keep taking my thing away from me. My thing is that I'm a storyteller. My thing is that I tell stories. You know, one of the smartest things they've ever said to me about my music is that, Ray, you know, your songs are never going to be the kind of songs that someone goes to a pitch meeting for, you know, George Strait or somebody's recording someone, and they're going to play your song, and George is going to say, I want that song. Not going to be, your songs are not that kind of, your songs are the kind of songs that the artists themselves are going to find it because they like it, and they're going to listen to it in their car. They're going to listen to it at home and go, give me that song. You know, that song, like a Ryan Adams or, you know, somebody like that. And interestingly enough, that's kind of turned around a little bit now, because you see guys like Jason Isbell, and you see guys like that, Zach Bryan. You see people like that actually getting airplay.
I love it.
Getting
it's such a full circle moment, man. It's like a we just went to see Jason Isbell here in Denmark. My wife and I just went out 3 days ago to see him in Denmark. I saw the pictures. I'm still jealous of you. So, you know.
You couldn't get another human being in that room. And when my daughter Savannah and I went to see Zach Bryan a couple of years ago, again, packed out to the walls from people coming all over Europe, from Sweden, from Norway, from Finland, coming. And I can guarantee you, when I came here in 1995, I could have walked down the streets of Copenhagen and asked 10 people, and 8 of them would not have known who Garth Brooks was. At the peak of his career, it is just different, and I think it's the organic nature of the music. I mean, I played the other night in a pub, just did a pub gig, and just for the funds of it, I played Tyler Chowder's Little Feathered Indians, and I just love the guitar riff, and so I played it. I got a table full of Danish boys singing along at the front. I'm like, when did this happen?
I love it too. Like, as a fan of that style of music, that storytelling, the vibe of it, just the almost ethereal trip from beginning to end of song that doesn't exist within the Nashville machine. And believe me, I might turn some people off. I have a lot of songwriters on this show that are part of that Nashville machine. So
you have some of the greatest in the history of the world. Yeah, Tony Arata on this. I mean, you know, I mean, that guy, I mean, you know, that's what I mean. That's why it's not safe to denigrate an entire group of people, because in my mind,
and the beautiful thing about it, Ray, is all of them are doing it different. Right? They're all doing it different. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. And that's the predominant thing that I hear every single time I talk to a songwriter that's heralded or unheralded or famous or whatever. Everybody's doing it different. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. It's ridiculous to think any other way than that. But I
think that's smart. Yeah, that's smart. And there's a lot of these guys, and I have a lot of good friends that do this, and I'm actually working with some of them next weekend. One of the best things, anyone who teaches songwriting, which is really hard to do, and I do not try it, but one of the first things you have to lay that out. What you just said, that should be the manifesto, is that I can't teach you how to do this.
Yep.
I can show you how the structures work. I can show you some ideas. Little thing I mentioned before, where if the chorus is this, the verse might want to be this, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well,
how to write song. I can't teach you how
I
to write
mentioned
songs,
this
man.
almost on every single episode, that songwriting is one of the most unfair things in the entire world, because when you find success with it, and I'm talking commercial success here, you find commercial success with a song and it goes out there. We'll use Tony Arata as an example, like the dance. You put the dance out there into the world and it's a global smash and everybody knows the words to this song. You have the ultimate success as a songwriter. Now you have to replicate that success without doing the same thing that got you the success in the first place.
It's crazy.
You literally have to do something different to create the same success, and that's why people struggle with it. Like,
one of the most wonderful memories in my life was being at the Bluebird in Nashville. I have a lot of bad memories there too, but this was a great one. Tony was there and he sang the dance, and I was just like, man, I mean, just to watch the writer do that song. And of course Tony's approach is Tony's a little bit different than Garth's, and just and just to watch him do it, man, and just to sit there and go, he made up that song. That guy right there that's like 7 feet away from me wrote that song. And I and you spoke to him, and I saw your thing with him. I mean, he's such a humble guy.
Very much so.
He's just a humble man. And I'm trying to do at my age, trying to do fanboy stuff with him, and he's just like, he's not having it. He's like not having it at all. He's like, and he just was like, yeah, I can't remember what he said, but something like, every once in a while you just catch one, lightning in a bottle.
He says that all the time about the dance. And the first time I met Tony was on stage, and I was doing an interview with him, Mark Germino, and Vince Gill. And it was me and those three guys on a stage. And
you couldn't get anybody good for that interview.
No, not at all.
No, I'm sorry about that.
And
bro.
so they gave me 10 minutes with these three guys. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with 10 minutes? But yeah, Tony and I just hit it off. Like, of the four of us, man, him and I just hit it off. And when the interview was over, they had like 3 hours until they were going to do a round robin or writer's round. That night, and they had 3 hours off, and Tony and I just chatted for the next 2.5 hours before the show. And not long after that, I quit podcasting. It was one of my final one of my final episodes. And then fast forward until 2024. That was 2019, so 5 years.
Wow.
And then Germino passed away recently.
Oh, so sad.
And one of the reasons why I wanted to come back and do this was because of that interview with those three guys that I didn't get enough time with. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a new show, and it's going to be timeless. It's going to be no limits. We're going to talk about everything and hopefully just not have any time limits. And Germino was the very first person I contacted. And of course, he passed away not long after, maybe 6 or 7 days after I reached out. And then I talked to Bernie Nelson on the show, who wrote "Daddy Never Was the Cadillac Kind."
Yeah, sure.
And he brought up Tony's name as part of that interview because they were like compadres back in the day. And I was like, man, I wonder what Tony's up to. And I realized I still had his number in my phone. So I got off the call with Bernie and immediately called Tony up, and he remembered me from that day 5 years ago. You talk about a humble guy who you just never would guess that the man wrote a global smash. That's who Tony is. Literally just called him up and he knew who I was.
I mean, you literally just like named 5 people that they're like icons to me. And so for me to be on a show with you after you've talked to Tony and Bernie and
you talked to
Germino,
you literally just said that you learned about the person behind the curtain, the person behind the song. I had the same epiphany, Ray. And you're a songwriter, I'm not, but I'm a very inquisitive guy. So when I used to do karaoke a lot, and so you would do a karaoke song, and at the end of the song it would say written by Acuff Rose or whoever, Harlan Howard, Hank Cochran. And sometimes it would be a different, most of the time, it'd be a different name than the person you're singing. So
sure.
what is going on here? That's not a
Yeah,
Harlan Howard song. That's a George Strait song. So that's where
yeah,
my genesis came from, wanting to know. And I've just been
that's
blessed that I email people, and sometimes they say yes, you know?
yeah. Well, the thing for me too, and you know Nashville now. I mean, I never coming from the folk music tradition, especially, and or having a writing partner, someone that I wrote with. I mean, the whole idea of Nashville, especially when I first got there, and got you know co-writing. I have to write with people I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like, no, I can't. I really, and
Was
it
there
took
was
me a
there ego
while.
involved in that, or was it just
No, it was not in any way. It was um the idea of being that exposed to another person that I really didn't know,
I was
because I'm never going to write. I hope I'm never going to write anything again, and I should say again because I did try it. That doesn't have something to do with me. It
yeah.
doesn't have some personal part of me in it. And I mean, of course, I was new and had publisher and blah blah blah. So I tried it and I discovered it's just not for me. It's just not. Again, the people that can do it, more power to them. They're great. They're doing well. That's excellent. But I have now co-writers, and I do because I'm not the strongest melodist in the world. I mean, I'm a lyric guy. I'm any ego I have about this is all literary, all
Yeah.
about words.
That's
Um,
where I was
so
going with this, because you
you
mentioned
know,
earlier that you weren't very melodic. Like it was
no,
all lyrical for you.
I have three good melodies that I can put, and every once in a
That's
while
three more
another
than
one will
I
come into
have.
my
That's three more than I
every once
have.
in a while another one will come into my head, and I realized that my strengths are it's not for nothing that my handle is Word Man Ray. That's my strength, and so what I do though, and I mean again, got to be real careful. I have friends, you've seen them on my Facebook that talk about writing 300 or 400 songs a year.
Hmm.
I don't think I've written 300 or 400 songs in my entire life.
Hmm.
I can tell you that I haven't. And I can guarantee you, I mean, I parse it this way. If I've written 250, 300 songs, maybe throughout my whole life, 200 of them are shit.
Hmm.
200 of them I wouldn't play for you.
Man, I have so many questions.
Yeah.
I'm picking up on little things that you're saying, and I want to flesh them out more.
Go ahead.
You
Fire
said
away.
that you said all the songs that you write, some part of that song is for you, or it's about you, and I would imagine that's part of the reason why you don't have the catalog that other people do, is because
No.
most if not all of your songs are from a personal perspective.
It's kind of like I think I don't want to quote it wrong, but I think there are two things that work here. Springsteen once talked about emotional honesty. I mean, Springsteen wrote a lot of songs about racing in the streets in cars, and he didn't have a driver's license. It was more about the emotional honesty of the thing. And then, as I tell people all the time, my songs are honest, but I'm not a journalist. I'm not telling a story exactly the way it happened. I mean, I write a lot about my family. I write a lot of songs about my dad. And all of those things happened.
Mm-hmm.
They may not have happened exactly in the order they appear. They may not have happened exactly to that person, but the emotional integrity has always got to be there.
I love that.
Always, I can't. I tell people all the time. I mean, I get, I'm a relatively well-respected songwriter in my genre, and people want to write with me, and I'm like, okay, probably not. I have my co-writers that I write with. Let me hear some stuff. If you start the sentence off with "I only ever listen to country music," then we're not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to do that because, I mean, you may never hear a trace of Miles Davis or John Coltrane in my music, but everything that I've imbibed there is in my head, and the freedom that those guys expressed makes my brain work that way. In that, I am very much. If you and I were sitting down to write a song together, there are no bad ideas in this room.
Mm-hmm.
None.
Yep.
None. Because I've seen, you know, like you have, you're a music fan. I've seen jazz bands when I'm going, what the hell are they doing?
Yep.
But when they got back to the theme in the middle, you're like, oh my gosh, what a trip I just
Yeah,
went
it
on.
makes sense.
So,
You always have to follow the song, and if you don't, then you're doing yourself an injustice, right? As a
well, as I
songwriter.
say in Nashville, the song is king. The
That's
song
right.
is king,
Right.
and you write the song that's in the room at that moment.
That's right.
And
don't fight it.
Steven,
you can't fight it because
no.
the song will win. Like you said, the song is king. Yeah.
As Stephen King says, as a lot of other people say, you have to go, I mean, Marty Dodson, great songwriter, great songwriting teacher.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Marty always says you have to be brave enough to realize that that's a very clever line, but it doesn't fit this song. It's got to go.
Yeah.
It doesn't work here.
We're talking about a guy that wrote a song about his grandmother and how, she wasn't going to live long after her grandfather, his grandfather died, and took that to his publisher. And the publisher was like, nah, dude, this song is about you, and nobody else is going to care about this song except for you because it's about you. And that song ended up being While You Loved Me by Rascal Flatts because he went home and he changed it. And now that's, a huge song. I love that you mentioned Marty Dodson. I'm a huge fan of Marty Dodson.
I'm going to see Marty tomorrow.
Yeah.
Actually, Friday. I'll see Marty.
I don't know. Episode 11, I think, of this show.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Marty is one of those guys. As I said, there are a lot of people out there that will sell you a bill of goods about, if you take my songwriting course, I can guarantee. Well, as soon as they say that, walk away.
Go away.
Run away.
Yep. Nobody can guarantee you nothing.
What Clay Mills and Marty do with Songtown USA is they tell you, we can make you a better songwriter. That's it.
Yep.
That's all they tell you. They tell you that we can get you instructions from some of the greatest songwriters in the world, but they absolutely do not tell you in any way, shape, or form that it can get you a deal. They can get your songs cut. They get none of it because nobody can, my friend. Nobody can. And I mean, when I first encountered those guys 10 years ago or so now, believe me, I was skeptical. I was like, come on. I mean, Marty had been a friend. Marty's a real good friend of a friend of mine, Chip Davis, Ray Davis. And so I knew who Marty was. And I was like, that doesn't sound like Marty doing some bogus songwriting course thing. That doesn't sound like Marty. So I was a beta thing of Songtown USA. And I was like, and I kept watching it. I kept looking at it going, no, they're legit.
And I don't mind saying it on every single episode I have a chance to do it on. Songtown USA is, if not the best resource for an aspiring songwriter out there, it is definitely one of the best.
I will say it's the best by far.
Yeah, I would agree.
I am so absolutely 100% skeptical of all of that stuff because I mean they discuss things that, and they're honest about things that I look, they can teach you how to write a better song, but they're clear on the fact that that's what they can do. I mean, I'm very much this. I'm in Denmark. I'm sitting in my house in Denmark right now. My chances to be a successful Nashville songwriter sitting here are about zero.
Probably about the same as I have, to be honest.
Because the thing is, you got to be, if you're going to mine gold, you got to be where the gold is in the gold mine, bro. And I mean, I have a lot of friends in Nashville, so I have a lot of connections, and I can. But it's kind of like this.
Well, not only that, Ray, I don't think that's the kind of gold that you're after anyway, right?
Nah.
You know what I mean?
But no, but if you take, let's say it was, I almost guarantee you, this is mostly for the people who want to do that. You're going to have to go there. You're going to have to spend some substantial time there. You're going to have to make connections there. You're not going to get any. You can't shoot your MP3s to the publishing companies. They're not going to listen to them. Mm-hmm. I mean, I had a job in Nashville. One of the jobs I had there was sitting there, literally at a publisher's office, taking the tapes that came in and throwing them in the trash can. Mm-hmm. We can't listen to that. We can't listen to that because somewhere down the line, someone's going to cut one of our songs, and some songwriter that sent the tape in is going to say, "Oh, that sounds just like that song that I sent in. They stole my song." It's like, no. We're gonna put these tapes trash can. We're gonna bulk erase them, and that's gonna be the end of your song, if you don't have a personal contact. It's simply this: everything in life is personal contact. Everything in life is personal contact. Boston is getting ready to make a record, and Boston says, I saw Ray the other day down at the Piggly Wiggly. Let's see what he has.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't see Ray for 10 years, you're not going to think of Ray. You might have liked one of my songs 10 years ago, but you're not going to think of me, man. It's and
yeah, the
it's
advice to people in Nashville is meet people. You have to meet people.
Meet people.
Yep.
Meet people. Meet people and meet everybody.
Every single person. Because you never know which one is going to be the one,
Right. If you want to do that, again, it's not my thing. It's not my thing. But don't just go there and try to write with Kenny Chesney, because Kenny Chesney's not going to write with you.
Nope.
But I knew Kenny Chesney when he was singing in bars just like I was. And if you would have said to me at that time, who in this bar do you think is going to chance? He would have been the last dude I would have picked. The absolute last one. I missed him by 300 miles. I just didn't see it. So I didn't dismiss it. But, I didn't know him that well. He was just another guy that sang in the turf on Lower Broad when I did. It wasn't like I dismissed him or anything else like that. But, perfectly honestly, the guy that ran the place wouldn't even give him featured sets in the evening because he just wasn't that strong.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, somebody wrote with Kenny back then. Somebody wrote with Garth when he first came to town. Someone, and those guys are they're in his inner circle now. So you never know. Like I said, that's not my path. That's not my calling. My calling is to be an artist and a singer-songwriter on my own terms. So, but I'm just young people or people that are going down to do it. Don't like dismiss this guy. Goes, he's got nothing going on. You just don't know.
So, I guess the question here is, I don't want to wrap it up quite yet. We're chugging along here, but you're almost 70 years old, so you have some you have some perspective in reflection now, looking back at those times at a younger Ray, and you know all the choices you made, and perhaps some of the choices you should have made, come back to you. You mentioned you do things on your terms. So looking back, are there any regrets? Or is there any time in your life when you wish you had relented a little bit more to perhaps be more commercial or, less on your terms, as you say?
Artistically, I don't know if it, I kind of wish I would not have been so hard-headed about some things. My regrets are mostly personal in that, I have a daughter that lives in Nashville, and so, moving all the way over here when she was young and dealing with being an absentee dad in that situation, that's a regret. That's a regret. Because I'm pretty good at what I do. So had I stayed in Nashville, I might have had some success at it, and my life might have worked out in a different way in that context. As far as I have more regrets for the very few times that I didn't trust my own muse and I didn't trust my own judgment and worked on projects that I really kind of am glad never really came to full fruition because they just really weren't me. There are a couple of records. There are a couple of records out.
Your regrets are because you relented, not because you didn't.
There are a couple of records out there with my name on them. There are a few things floating around with my name on them that I'm kind of like, oh God, if I never hear that again, that'll suit me just fine. So,
I have some interviews like that. Believe me.
Other than that, no. It's I'm not. Again, it's just not. I'm always careful to couch this and saying, listen, however anybody takes this walk is fine by me. It's their walk, not mine. But when I write a song, like I said, I have maybe 50 songs from my catalog I would play for you. Maybe, and one of them, my song Confession. When I write a song like Confession and someone says to me anything about it, I'm like, yeah, but I know that's a good song.
Yeah.
I know that's a good song.
Man, I got to tell you, not to cut you off, but since you're talking about Confession will be the second song we present a little bit later.
I couldn't remember what I sent you. So
yeah, it was Confession. But I got to tell you this story because this being such a late interview, for me, not you, for me, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I went into the house,
late,
and I always kind of refresh my memory. I write my outline and my notes usually a week before we get together, and then just before we talk, I will refresh my memory, not with the notes but with the music, because it's about the music for me. So I want to be able to have the music fresh on my mind when I get into the room with you. You know what I'm saying? So I'm laying in bed and my wife is half asleep next to me, and I'm playing the whole record, Confession, which, man, what a amazing piece of work. But at this moment in time, I'm playing the actual title track, and my wife rolls over and she says, "Who is that?" And I said, "I'll be talking to him in about 25 minutes. And she's like, "That's the guy you're talking to tonight?" And just that doesn't happen. My wife does not get impressed
thank her
like
for
that.
me.
I will. It's an absolutely gorgeous song. I'm looking forward to hearing about that in a little while. When we do play it for everybody out there. It's just a beautiful, beautiful piece of work. And
thank you.
And honestly, when I heard your unplugged version, when you emailed that over, I was like, man, I'm so happy to get to talk to you. And
I appreciate that, man.
I'm glad that you did things on your terms. I'm glad you don't have any regrets about that, because that can be a really hard thing as an artist when you're not getting the notoriety you feel like you deserve, and rightfully so, because you are exposing your heart to the world and your soul to the world. And, you do have those people that love it, but at the same time, it's not commercially viable.
No.
Like they say in Nashville. I love that you stuck to your guns, and I'm glad you don't have regrets for that.
Well, the tricky thing is now, even here, I mean, and it's an ongoing, as you know, it's an ongoing process. I mean, a couple of years back, I was in Nashville. As I said, I don't really imbibe much in songwriting classes or anything like that at this point in my life. But I had always wanted to. Rodney Crowell is probably my favorite country songwriter. And so
incredible.
Rodney does this songwriting camp every year, and he brings in the best of the best. And so 2 years ago, in the summer, he had one of his camps in Nashville, and he had Beth Nielsen Chapman and Peter Asher, and just a laundry list of Gretchen Peters, a laundry list of these people that I just admire so much. And I thought, I'm going to go there. I'm going to do this one. My mom had just passed away, and she had left me a little bit of money. And I thought, okay, what would my mom want me to do with this couple of $1,000 that she left behind? She'd want me to do something with my music. And so I signed up for the class, and fortunately, like I said, my daughter lives in Nashville, and all my friends live there. So it was kind of like, okay, I'm going to go on a little vacation, and I'm going to do the songwriting thing. And I went, and it was predictable, 50, 60, 70 people there trying very hard to get these people to listen to their songs to make them all famous, which is not how any of this works. This doesn't work that way. I already knew that. So it was like, I went there and I'm like, I'm not getting out of this damn thing what I wanted to get out of this. I'm not getting the vibe. I'm not getting it. So finally, I went through the whole thing. And I did, I had a class with Rodney. There was about 12, 13 of us. I had a class with Rodney. Rodney's down front. And fortunately, I got picked to be one of the people to play a song for Rodney. And so, Boston, I'm walking down from the auditorium, and I didn't have my guitar with me because I just I'm not going to play. I'm not going to do that. But Rodney said, well, why don't you play me something? So I didn't have my guitar with me, and me being me, I said to Rodney Crowell, can I borrow your guitar? And he's like, sure. And And I had in my hand, my notebook, and I had this kind of commercially whatever thing. I thought, I'll play that. And I got down there and I thought, no, I'm not. I'm not going to do that. That's not who I am. So I looked at him. I said, listen, this is new. I don't have any lyrics to give you to read along with. And I don't know, So I played a song that I wrote about George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, and I played it to him. It's called Say His Name. And I played that song. And I mean, it's a political song. There's no question about it. This is one that doesn't avoid making its point. And it was just dead silence. I mean, dead silence. And he looked at me, and I thought, oh, you really stepped in it here, buddy. And Rodney was like, that's a great song, but it's not finished. Because remember, women also have been through this. And I want you to go write me a verse about a woman and then send it to me. And I'm like, how do I send? He said, you're a smart guy. You got this far. You can find my email address. So I wrote a song. I wrote a verse about Breonna Taylor, put it on the song. And long story short, I now have a relationship with Rodney Crowell, which you've seen in my press stuff about my political stuff. Because at the same thing, I said to Joe Henry, I said, Joe, I have these political songs. I said, I have these political songs. I said, but I'm cautious about not wanting to offend anybody. And he looked at me and he said, do you really have time for that? Do you really have time for that? And he said, you're not a young man. If these songs are what you want to sing, sing them. So that's how Blood came out. That's how Say His Name came out. That's how my song about school shootings, Thoughts and Prayers, my song about deportees, which is coming out next, I think, called In Case They're Gone. I mean, it's just simply this. No, I don't have time for that. So even though my walk has already been hard, I'm going to make it tougher because I'm going to do the political stuff.
And I love that. And the only thing I have to add to that is I absolutely hate that Say His Name is in any universe thought of as a political song. That's all I'm going to say about that. That's ridiculous to me. It's not a political song at all.
I didn't think so. Yeah. I didn't think so. I just thought that it was telling the truth.
It is absolutely a truthful song. And if somebody doesn't like that truth, that doesn't make it a political song.
I'm gonna, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm fortunate to get invited to songwriting festivals and stuff like that, and I've played it. I played it at home in Annapolis a couple of years ago, and a couple of people got up and walked out. That was okay. That's okay. I mean, I consider that a perfectly fine reaction. I mean, if that's their reaction, then I know. I mean, I have my song called "Resist." You can guess who that's about, and from the first time around, and I played that at a concert. And some people took umbrage to it, but you know what? I do resist. Yeah, I do resist.
All I gotta say to you, Ray, is I'm really freaking happy that you don't have time for that. Honestly,
I just don't. I really don't.
I love that.
I'm not going to stop.
Absolutely love that. Let's get into Confession. Okay, we're going to play that song. Take us into the room. What's Confession about?
Oh man, that's it is what it is. I mean, for the most. Like I said about emotional honesty, and sometimes they're not exactly on the point. This is just dead on the nose. I mean, the song starts off with, I'm not really proud of all the things I've done to set myself free when I got the urge to run. I couldn't tell you any more about myself than I just did in that line. And the second verse, it mentions, and my children bear the scars of all the mistakes I've made. I mean, it's called confession for a fellow that is not religious. It's exactly what it is. And, one of the comments in Nashville about that song, I said, when people make negative comments about that song, oh, you don't say the name of the song in the chorus. It's like, no kidding. No kidding. It's like, and then, as I mentioned before, I may have been a fellow that used to like to take a drink or two back in the day. And it's like, when they make whiskey a little stronger, highways a little longer, I might reach a place where I feel no pain. I can't write any better than that. I mean, if they want something better than that, they're going to have to go to someone
Man,
else. I can't write
Confession,
any
the
better.
song is who you are. It's what you
That's
are.
it,
And
top to bottom. Top to
of
bottom.
all the songs I've heard by you, and I've listened to a lot since I've known this was happening over the last 25 days or so, this is the song that I identify your name with the most. And I'm really, really excited to show this song. I'm glad you chose this as one of the two that you sent us so that we can show
Thanks.
this song as well. This is Confession by Ray Weaver. I know y'all are going to love this song.
I'm not really proud of everything I've done to shake myself free when I got the urge to run. Left some hearts broken, left some debts unpaid when I heard that highway call or some other sad cliche. When they make whiskey a little stronger, highways a little longer, I might really reach the place I feel no pain. So then I asked forgiveness, the things I cannot change, and pity on a prisoner bound by his own chain. 'Cause I wasted a lifetime on passing sweet lines. I can't stand face to face with my own alibis. But now the fiddler has his hand out and the piper stands unpaid, and my children bear the scars of these mistakes I've made. When they make whiskey a little stronger, highways a little longer, I might really reach that place I feel no pain. Till then I ask forgiveness, the things I cannot change, pity on a prisoner bound by his own chain. When they make whiskey a little stronger, highways a little longer, I might really reach that place I feel no pain. Till then I ask forgiveness for these things I cannot change, pity on a prisoner bound by his own chain.
All right, so we're back with Ray Weaver. I am in Texas. Ray is in Denmark. And a lot of times you start an interview like this, and the question is the elephant in the room. And a lot of times I will get the comments after, when are you going to ask the question in the room? And the question is, how in the world did Ray Weaver get to Denmark? You've alluded to it a couple of times, but I will let you tell the story.
Well, of course, my singer-songwriter friends, and there's a woman involved.
Of course.
And,
it's always about a girl.
So the publisher that I mentioned, who is not one of my favorite people on the planet, the one thing that he did do for my life, and it's a huge thing, there's no question about it. I was working for his company, and these two Danish fellas, Peter and Torkel Vest, they came to Nashville. They were recording some songs there. He handled some of their publishing as well. This is back in 1994. So they came to Nashville, and I played some in his studio, played some bass, did this, did that. And I met these two fellows, and they were fun. They were really, really fun guys. And Peter and I, the guy that's the singer-songwriter of the band, we had a lot of musical compadreship going on. He loved the folk music. He loved Tom Paxton, and he liked Rick Nelson. And so we talked a lot, and they came and saw me sing. I was doing the tourist thing at the 16th Avenue Cafe in Nashville at the time. I was doing the tourist thing. And they came and saw me sing. So they said, would you like to come to Denmark and play? And I was getting out of a marriage and all that stuff. And I said, sure. I said, sure, why not? And I'm like going, Denmark. And so, he's like, well, okay, we have a cafe, a restaurant in Denmark, and we would love to have you come play there on the island of Bornholm. And I'm like, okay, fine. Truth is, I never thought I'd hear from these guys again. Come on. I mean, how many times is a singer-songwriter in a room, somebody says it, yeah, and sure enough, next year, 95, about January, March or so, the publisher, who was also my agent at the time, he got an itinerary from those guys. Come to whatever, and start in May and then play until the end of the high season in the summer. This Bornholm is a tourist island in Denmark, so it gets really busy. Pay for the tourists, blah blah blah. End of July, first part of August. So yeah, and they said in the thing there, I would get 500 a night for doing a half hour. So
Okay.
little did I realize at the time they meant 500 krona, which is about,
good God,
which is
75 cents.
about $80 a night. So but I did have a room and I had food and everything. So and then I came over and I played, and I mean my wife was one of the waitresses at the place, and we met, and we were going to have summer romance, nothing serious. And here we are almost 30 years later, married, 2 kids, dog, and literally it was in so many ways the watershed moment of my life. It really was. I mean, I love everything about being an American, having that, I'm a different kind of American for sure, but I love Denmark. I love being here. It's a great place to grow. I mean, we've been back and forth. When we had children, we've raised them sort of back and forth between the two places. But I mean, I'm I consider myself very fortunate to have these two cultures.
I think it's really serendipitous as somebody who's just met you, because musically speaking, you have kind of put yourself on an island because of just sticking to your guns. And, I'm a storyteller, I'm a folk singer, I'm a songwriter. And all of that is not within what, the Nashville machine or the music machine is looking for. And then physically and geographically, you also put yourself on an island, which makes you even less likely to be seen and heard from the music machine. I find that very serendipitous, don't you?
I do, and I like it. And I, sometimes when I get homesick, when I have to watch. When I have to watch the Orioles at 3:00 in the morning, or when the late night NFL game on Thursday starts at 2 in the morning, I get homesick, but those are the kind of things I miss. I mean, and I miss the food and blah blah blah. But when I come home for an extended tour, I do come home 2 or 3, maybe 2 times a year now. When I come home for an extended tour, I realize how special it is, in a way, both in my mind and in the mind of the people that see me, that I do come from outside. That I have this, I don't know, this different smell about me, this different sense about me, that I'm not exactly the same as everybody else around. So it creates that sensation that this is interesting. This is the 5th singer-songwriter I've seen today, but he lives in Denmark. What does that do that's different?
Do you feel like that distance has helped with your viewpoint of how things are?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I'm always going to be who I am, and I'm always going to be, a curmudgeonly liberal kind of guy. But the fact is, having a wider viewpoint and having wider influences. I mean, I'm not afraid of the Muslim guy, because the guy that is my next door neighbor is a Muslim guy. It's not some guy that I see on the news. He's a nice man that lives at the end of my driveway, and so I don't, where, especially early on, and I mean, I don't know about now, but, you know, my American friends just didn't integrate with the people that I see on a daily basis, you know, and so all of us, whether we like it or not, are sometimes afraid of the other. And if we
Man.
stop viewing them as the other, then things will get better. You know, Lenny Bruce talked about it a million years ago. I mean, if we normalize these horrible things, and we said, and Lenny in one of his routines said, if we just said the N-word all the time, it would lose its power to hurt people. It would lose its power to make some poor black girl that's coming home from school, when someone yells it at her, it wouldn't matter. It just wouldn't matter. You know, if we could just stop being afraid of one another, just stop it. You know, it's like, and I don't, you know, the dialogue, the atmosphere now, and I don't want to get too far into it because I know that's not the point of your show, but it frightens me now. It frightens me now. And it's not just there. And this is one thing that it's important to send a message to our friends at home, is that, you know, I'm over here and almost no incumbents got reelected here in Europe. Almost none of them. The shift to the right is not accidental. It's not, it's happening everywhere. The message is the wrong message in my mind, but the message is being heard by a lot of people, you know, not just in the States, and not just, you know, and so people that don't agree with that, we have to try to figure out what's wrong with our messaging. Why are people not hearing what we're saying? Why all of a sudden are all of the things that I thought were important, integrity, honesty, not being a bully,
Inclusion,
it doesn't seem to matter anymore.
It doesn't. No,
it doesn't seem to matter. You know,
I told my wife, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I don't talk about this kind of stuff on the show very often, but it's important shit, so I'm going to say it. But I mean, what it boils down to, this shift to the right, if you ask me, and I've been around a long time, just like you, Ray. I've been a student of sociology and politics and economics and everything that goes with that. And it's always been very intriguing to me to just watch human nature at work, right? And essentially, what I think just happened from an election standpoint and from a political standpoint is most people's things that they are worried about. When I say most, I'm talking about marginalized people that have real fears of their rights being taken away, whether it's marital rights or bodily autonomy or just the right to exist or the universal right to health care or food or water or, you know, being pulled out of poverty. Like, these are things that are common sense things that we should all be worried about, but they don't affect most people. So because they don't affect most people, it doesn't enter their radar. And yet the price of eggs, it affects everybody. It affects every single person on the planet. When you go to the gas station, it affects you what the cost of gas is. And so because those things are affecting the mass majority of people, that's what they're going to vote for. And the perception is, well, I'll fix it. I'll fix it. And I know that's not just a nationalist thing from America. It's across the globe that people are saying, well, we'll fix this, and this affects you more than, you know, George Floyd or Breonna Taylor or, you know, all of the systemic racism and you know, I see memes all the time that talk about people who exclude other people have never been excluded.
Yeah. I mean, but you just hit it on the head. You and I couldn't be more aligned. It's a matter of, first of all, they're being sold a bill of goods, but we'll just move on from that.
Of course.
But the fact of the matter is, you know, we don't do our side any good by mocking someone because they decided to vote for the price of milk and eggs and butter. Because a single mother out there that needs to buy milk and eggs and butter, this is her concern.
Absolutely.
This is what she's concerned about.
Yeah.
This is what so to mock her and to say that she doesn't care about other things because that's her concern. Buddy, I've been in that place where I got kids and I can't afford milk and eggs and butter. I mean, one of the reasons that you asked me about coming to Denmark, I remember very, very clearly. I was in the States. We had come home for a little while. I was in the States. I was walking through the supermarket, and I had my daughter, Sandy, with me. My older daughter lives in Nashville, and she wanted a coloring book, or like a 49-cent coloring book. And I thought, I can't afford that. I can't afford that right now. And then I thought, you know what? Next month, the tourist season starts up again in Denmark, and I can make, $500 a day. I'm going back, and I'm going to go make some money.
Yeah.
And that, I've been in that position where I'm like looking at stuff saying, can I, and so we cannot, as concerned people, about all of the things you talk about, body autonomy, civil rights. I mean, all of that stuff is close to my heart, has to be up close to my heart, will always be close to my heart. But we cannot demonize people who are worried about not being able to feed their kids. We just can't.
The ironic thing, Ray, is we are both straight, white, cisgender men. And unfortunately speaking, we collectively, you and myself, have the absolute least to be worried about.
Absolutely.
And yet I know from your posts, and I'm sure you feel the same about the stuff that I put out there, we are worried the most.
I am.
For the people that do not look like us, do not love like us,
Nope.
do not, whatever. And that says it all. It says it all. I wore, just real quick, I wore purple hair. I have no hair now. That's a different story. But I wore purple hair for over 2 years. Just so I could wear my alliedness proudly out there.
It's so funny that you should say that, because I look a certain way, and I'm a large, very obviously American looking kind of guy. So sometimes people that look the same way, especially if I'm wearing my Ravens t-shirt or something like that, they'll think I'm an advocate, and they'll come up and they'll say something incredibly racist in my ear, or incredibly, whatever. And I'll be like, don't fucking talk to me that way.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm like, don't talk to me that way, and they're shocked. They're just shocked that I'm not, I'm like, no, I look this way because this is how I look, but I don't think that way, man. And I can't believe you think that way. And so, I mean, it is important. And but the one thing I think that I have lived as an immigrant. I mean, I'm an immigrant in Denmark. Right. I have lived as an immigrant. Now, I've had a much easier way of it because I look like this.
Of course.
Than my friend down here from Pakistan, or my friend from but you develop a different mentality when you realize that no matter what you look like, there are going to be rules to go through. There are going to be things that you have to do. And there are going to be people that no matter what you look like, what you sound like, who you are, they don't want you here. I mean, they don't want you here. You're going to run into that kind of stuff no matter where you go. So the other day, was it yesterday? Yesterday, I posted a video of myself singing Woody Guthrie's Deportees. I can't believe we're doing this again, bro. I can't believe we're doing it again. I mean, first of all, bottom line,
I mean, our daughters have less rights than our moms did, and that's just...
Oh, there's no question about it. No question about it. It's ridiculous.
And to hear other people say, well, we'll just have to agree to disagree. Absolutely not. I do not agree to disagree over somebody's rights being taken away when my mother had those rights and my daughters don't. And
not going to happen with me, man.
Yeah, there's no agree to disagree.
Not going to give you that one. Not going to give you that one, man. I mean, if you don't like cilantro, that's okay. But I'm not going to.
And it's it's like you mentioned. If you're voting because your pocketbook is hurting, I can understand that. We've all dealt with that. I understand, and I can understand that maybe these hot button topics don't affect you. They're not part of your circle. They're not part of your whatever your daily worries. Well, they are mine. They are part of my
Yeah.
daily worries.
Yeah,
and they are part
they're
of my
mine.
inner circle. And I will advocate for those things because those are the people that I care about. Just like you're going to
Exactly.
advocate for the people you care about.
Exactly.
But I'm
Exactly.
also on the same side of that. I'm not going to demonize that person for voting differently from
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
because they voted for what was affecting them detrimentally. You know?
All we have to do is remember that. I mean, that very wise statement. Just don't. I mean, now there are some people demonize them, but let's not demonize half the country,
Right.
because for some reason, more than half the country, according to what we just saw, thinks differently than I do.
The same
I
as me.
would.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in knowing why than I am. Listen, I'm an anomaly in my family, buddy. Everybody that I know, my sisters, my brothers-in-law, my cousin, everybody is on the opposite side of
I
this
am
than
a
I
blue dot in a red state,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
brother.
Yeah,
I am, yeah.
so I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated by how the hell I got here and how the hell they got there. Because I will say fundamentally, in every way, shape, or form, these are good people. They grew up the same way I did. Good, hardworking, intelligent, smart people. But by the same token, I visit with them and their refrigerators are full. They have 2 or 3 trucks, a boat, a nice home. They go out to eat whenever they want to. They're living large, and then they say, "God, this economy is so bad." What do you want?
Right.
I mean, what would be different?
Fucking
That's
burgeoning 401ks all over the place.
exactly.
Right?
And it's like, I'm trying to figure out. I can't even put a bottle of water in your refrigerator, but you're telling me, it's like my economy is not that good, man. So I don't,
And I think a major part of it too is nationalism, right? Like they don't understand.
No.
I would say the vast majority of Americans don't think outside of America. It never happens.
No.
They don't know what
You're
the price
exactly
of
right.
gas is in the Philippines or what the inflation rate is in Nigeria. I do because I want to know those things. I want to know where we stand in the world because there is a world out there outside of America.
You came out of COVID. We came out of COVID better than any other country in the world.
Absolutely.
The one country that came out almost as well is Denmark, the one I live in now. But one of my favorite things is to listen to Americans talk about gas prices. I love hearing that, man, because I can guarantee you that right down the road here, I'm going to pay 4 times as much.
Yep.
4 times as much. So it's like, come on. And all of this because all of these things flow together. Once you guys get what you think you want, and all of these people are deported, and you have tariffs on all this, and you have welcome to my world. You're not going to be able to go out to dinner for less than $200-300 a night. You're going to have a $20 head of lettuce. It's not going to be the Dollar General anymore. It's going to be the $20 General. I mean, you just don't know what you're asking for. But go ahead.
Yep.
I said, go ahead.
Well,
go ahead.
It's. I mean, I'm sure you know the incumbent disease that happens in politics. If I was telling my wife because she didn't understand, and she's pro Gaza, and I mean, it's hard to not be pro Gaza because if you aren't pro Gaza, that means you're pro genocide. I don't care what anybody says, but it's whatever. Nobody on this planet should be okay with genocide, but that's a different thing. But I tried to tell her, I said, when you have somebody that's in office, it doesn't matter what office it is. It could be president, it could be dog catcher. If they're not doing a perfect job in the term amount of time that they have, then they're going to get voted out unless the person that is their direct, opposition is just completely not viable. And unfortunately, some of us feel that Trump is not completely viable. But on the other side of the coin, he had 4 years, and a lot of people feel that those 4 years were amazing. I'm not one. I'm not one of them, but there are a lot of people who feel that way. And the Biden administration, Biden did a lot of good things, but it was really far from perfect. There were, there's a lot of things, and so because he wasn't perfect, that falls on Kamala. And even though it's not really her responsibility, and then, you have to ramp up a campaign that starts like 70 days before, whatever it was, if you don't have a perfect administration, if you're the incumbent, you're already fighting uphill. And, it's just, I call it the incumbent disease. I mean, you look at George W. Bush, the original George Bush, the man won a war and only got 4 years.
Yep.
And
I mean, it literally, you're right on the money, but she had 103 days. The messaging was a little whatever. And whether or not it's correct, that's not the point. The point is that President Biden's administration was not popular, and she was very careful about not distancing herself too far from the president. I think that was a mistake.
It was a
huge
mistake.
People wanted to hear her say, I'm going to do all this differently. I'm going to do this and this and this. And, so it just basically became... honestly, from somebody who studies this stuff, it was an impossible situation for her. Yeah.
Because she absolutely should try to, tout the wins of the administration, which there were many wins.
Many.
Yeah, but in order to tout those wins, you also have to accept the losses. And she wasn't willing to accept the losses, and she wasn't vocal enough about accepting the losses. I feel
exactly right.
If she would have just came out and said, yeah, we fucked that up. Yeah, the border is fucked up, and we didn't do anything about it. And I think it would have been met with a little bit different circumstance. But
you're right.
I love that we could talk about politics tonight. I know you were a little bit apprehensive about that. I am as well.
I'm a political songwriter, man. It's okay.
Well, I mean, I knew what I was getting into. It's all good. And of course, Cliff goes our way as well, And really, for me, it boils down to the word kindness. And this isn't a political.
That's all it is.
Yeah, it's not a political statement for me. It's all about being kind to people, and that's what rules my world. I try to be as kind to people as I can because, we have a very finite time on this planet, and we should use that for good. And kindness is far more effortless than trying to be mean to somebody all the time. And that brings me, to the other group of people. Like I said, the vast majority of the country is just trying to get by, and they're going to vote on the things that directly affect them. But then you have the other group of people that is just looking for justification for the way they feel and the way they hate and the way they lash out at other people. And they feel like they get that justification or that right to do that by who they vote for. And those people, I don't know how you can be like that. I just don't.
No, I don't either.
Like, I can't fathom that being your identity. You know what I mean?
And you can tell that I'm just tensing up here. Because I can't either. I can't.
I just don't know why you would accept that as your identity. Like, you get one shot at this time on the planet, and that's the hill you're on. Like, that's the hill you're on. But anyway, I got a couple more questions.
Okay.
I know that you have a new project that you're working on. I'd love to hear about that, so folks out there will know what's in the works for Ray Weaver coming up.
Well, yeah, I'm going to do, like I said, I'm going to assemble the political or the socially conscious songs or whatever into a project. Hopefully, we'll have it out. We'll have the full project out by next year. I plan on getting a new single, if that's what you call them anymore, I don't know, January, February, and then we'll start building from there. This song is done better than I expected, but everything has a very short shelf life these days, whereas in the old days, the run of a record, as they call it, could be 6 months or whatever. It's not going to be that this time. This you get 3 months, you get maybe 90 days, and this one's we're into the second month with this one, and I can see, the streaming is still going well, but we've gone from maybe 1,000 a day down to 300, and then down to 80, and then up. I want to continue this process that I'm doing with these socially conscious songs and this message. I mean, there's no bullshitting around here. I mean, I'm in the last quarter of this lifetime that I'm going to have. So I want to get this stuff done and get it out there. And I want this music, along with some of the other stuff that I write, which I think, like Confession and stuff, I want that to be my legacy. I want it to be my legacy. So we'll have the project. Hopefully I'll have the full
the full EP, if that's what they call it, these 5-6 songs, by summer next year.
Well, when the new single comes out earlier in the year, I would love to have you on my other show that we were talking about earlier.
Sure, love to.
I'll tell Cliff about that. That way he can keep us on his.
Hey, let me ask you then.
Sure.
Okay, I've got. We have the blood is never on their hands. I've got my thoughts and prayers song, which is the school shooting song, and then I've got in case they're gone, which is my deportee song, and I've got
say his name.
Say his name, and I've got my seriously, absolutely 100%, anti he who shall not be named song, and I'm trying to decide, the next way to go with the single. I'm trying to decide which one do you think would have a more powerful impact on the audience at this moment?
At this moment, I would probably go with the school shooting one.
Yeah, I think so too. That's the you're another vote for that one, and just musically, it's a departure from what we did this time.
Have you thought about putting? I know you talked about the Woody Guthrie thing that you did on Facebook. You showed me the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Have you thought about putting that on the record?
Yeah, I think so. I think
you should do that.
I think so. I think I've actually, it's very, man, you're just like on the top of this shit, because literally I thought about opening with a verse of that into my song In Case They're Gone, because it just literally, it shows from 1948 to now, it's exactly the same. Exactly.
Well, I mean, you could use that as a bridge rather than putting a line from that song into one of your songs. Use the entire song as a bridge to the new song.
It's going to work that way. It's just because, I can't remember. James Lee Burke, in one of his short stories, talked about that. Talked about how one of the characters was saying how unfair it was, whenever things are going well and we need people to pick this or clean that or care that, we love these people. Then things get a little tough. They become the identifiable out group. Then we got to get rid of them.
The enemy within, right?
Oh yeah, that's me. just ask the boss. That's me.
Same here. Yeah, I'm like I said, blue dot, red state. Here I am.
Yeah. There you are.
So last question. This might be the hardest one for you to do from your perspective today. We talked a lot about songwriters, people that you know, people that you don't know, people that you immortalize or look up to. This is my Mount Rushmore moment for Ray Weaver. Who is on your Mount Rushmore of songwriters?
Well, absolutely got to be Jackson Brown's got to be on there. Rodney Crowell's got to be on there. This is a tough one because the problem is not inclusion. The problem is exclusion. Who do you leave out? I'm sure you can hear, and the blood is never on their hands. Springsteen has got to be on there. And Bob Dylan has got to be on.
Wow, what a freaking list, man! Holy crap!
And that's today. Call me tomorrow and ask me again.
Oh, it changes for me all the time. My two constants are McCartney and Simon.
Of course,
Paul Simon, Paul McCartney.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. When we talk about it, it also depends on what I'm listening to. I mean, I get into interesting discussions with people about this because it's my favorite topic. It's my favorite topic. So, Paul Simon, to be who he is, I think, in the icon of great American songwriters. Now, this is going to maybe sound weird, counterintuitive, but I think he's seriously underrated. I don't think people realize how. I don't think people realize how great he is.
Absolutely ridiculous how overlooked he is. Absolutely,
he is. Even myself. Dylan. This. From that period of time, melodically, whatever. I mean, you're just not going to find anybody better. You're just not going to find anybody better. And he always seems to be left out of the discussion. I mean, and then you could go even deeper in, all of those. I mean, he's, and McCartney, Well, that's just, he's one of those guys. I can't remember who said this to me. He's one of those guys that is so far up the mountain. We don't even think about him anymore when we're having this conversation. He's like, no, we don't have to bring him up.
He's the one that carved the mountain, right? Like
that goes without saying.
He's the sculptor, by God.
Goes without saying. We don't have to mention him. We don't have to bring him up because I had not seen my son and my wife and I. We went to see Paul about 5 years ago here in Denmark. And it's one of those things where I had the same experience when I saw Christofferson, may he rest, about 10 years ago. You go in there and you watch and you're like, he wrote all of that. He wrote all of that. It's just so overwhelming. I mean, McCartney, the show was just amazing and singing and playing. With Chris, it was like, here comes a guy on stage, probably your uncle Bubba plays better guitar. He can't sing, and he had a really bad head cold. He actually said to the audience that night, you guys paid a lot of money to watch an old man blow his nose. And and then he started singing, and you go, he wrote all of that, every bit of it. It doesn't really matter that in his own words, not mine, in his own words, he sings like a frog. He wrote that. He wrote Me and Bobby McGee. And he wrote, you're just like, so over. And so some people, you like, if you ask me tomorrow, of course, Christofferson would be on my Mount Rushmore. Tom T. Hall would be on it. I mean, it's like a river. To me, I call it a song line. It's just all connected. Maybe sometimes I don't even think of them as individuals. I think of it as
honestly, it's a vibe. It's a mood, right?
Yeah, it's almost without it's almost like a spiritual thing for me. Absolutely. These guys are they're just there in my consciousness all the time. One of my recent songs, I wrote, Sometimes a Woman. I sang a line and went, wait a minute. And I'm like flipping back through my mental memory banks going, oh, that's a Tom T. Hall line. I can't put that in there. It's just in my head. It's just in my head. And it's like, certainly never an intent of borrowing from anybody, but it's just, they're so naturally part of my conversation, So good art is that way. My kids, as they got older, they were like, Dad, you stole every joke you ever told from MASH. We've now watched MASH. All the stuff that we thought was you stole all that stuff.
Oh,
it's like,
gosh.
yeah, probably
oh
so.
My gosh, I'm that guy. I don't know how deeply you follow my social media, but on my
I'm following it very closely now. I find you so fascinating. And I really, it's just like, just to watch a guy like you, a content creator, watch a guy like you that just, for whatever reason you're doing it, the reason that comes through to me is the same way that I just love this shit, man. I love writing songs and I love talking about songs and love telling stories. And when I watch you and listen to you and read your stuff, you just love it. You're going to do it whether you get a nickel for it. You're going to do it.
I tried not to do it for a really long time. And
I know.
My son kept telling me all the time, you miss it, Dad. Like, you talk about it all the time. You miss it. And honestly, I was doing things for the wrong reasons at times the first time, and I was going really hard. We were doing everything live and in the living room. So like every Sunday,
it's tough.
Yeah, every Sunday we would turn my living room into a movie set, and we'd have 4 or 5 different artists all on the same day.
Wow, that's tough. Bro.
So I'm doing like 3, 4, 5 episodes a week, and then I'm not selling sponsorships. Every episode's 16 hours post production. So it was like, man, I can't do this for what I'm getting out of it. Like, I hate to even think of it in those terms, but honestly, the Vince Gill, Tony Arata, Mark Gemino thing was like the last straw. I could not sell a sponsorship for that episode. Like,
what?
I could not get a commercial for that episode.
Gosh almighty.
And so,
that's crazy.
Like, for me, I felt like I was a pioneer. I was in podcasting too early. Because we're talking about 2018, 2019, and nobody really understood what I was doing. And then when I stopped doing it, everybody else tried to do it and couldn't do it, right? Like what I was doing, they couldn't do it. So, but eventually the passion, it kind of, it wins out always, and you know that as a songwriter.
Yeah, it does. It does.
So
It does.
here I
mean,
am.
I went through periods where I didn't write. I just, or especially perform. I just went through periods where I was like, nah, no one wants to see an old man like me on stage anymore. It's just not, and I was just like you. I had good people around me going, no, just get out there. No, you look like shit in spandex, so you're not going to be a rock star at this point, but
Yep.
just get out there and tell your stories. Just get out there and do what you do, and as I said, I have a good core audience, and I'm just now, man, I would love to, I'm not gonna lie, I would love to book a short tour where I go to a couple of different places in the world and sing my own songs and do my own music. But if that doesn't happen, fine. The reason I'm doing it is because these are the songs that are in my head now. This is the voice that I want to have. I think not in any arch way or in any, egotistical way. I think that it's important that this stuff gets heard. The great songwriter, Jesse Colin Young, Jesse has a big part of this. You might have seen it about a year ago or whatever. He put out a thing on social media on Facebook where he was imploring young songwriters to write socially conscious songs because he said it's just not happening anymore. Mm-hmm. And so he offered some sort of, I don't even know what the prize was. It didn't matter because I'm not a young songwriter, but he was asking young songwriters to do that. And I thought, why the hell am I not doing it? I've got these songs. So, to me, it's, and I don't want to be preachy or whatever. I mean, one of my friends who I gave him the list that I was telling you about what I was thinking about for the next single. He goes, "Are you ever happy?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm very, very happy. Very happy. But I also have this other thing that needs to be expressed, I'm actually an extremely happy and upbeat and satisfied kind of guy. It's not that. It's that, I mean, I think Woody Allen made a joke in one of his movies a million years ago where he said, if someone is starving to death somewhere in the world, I just can't have a good time. And I mean, I know he was kind of like making fun of all of us, but I mean, I do really feel that
it's
way.
It's so funny you
say
that because, like, my wife calls me the joyful curmudgeon.
We could start a club.
Yeah,
man.
I'm telling you, man. It's club, like, man, I have such a weird outlook on the world, and where I want people to be happy and I want people to be kind, but at the same time, I get so freaking aggravated by life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It just gets up and especially, I mean, I think more than it just gets so sad in the sense that it's so simple. Mm-hmm. Just kindness, as you said, it's just kindness. Yep. If we could just figure out a way to be kind to one another. Yep. And not expect perfection from anybody, Mm-hmm. I mean, not expect perfection from, I have my bad days. You have your bad days. I mean, Dr. King had his bad days, but he was still Dr. Martin Luther King, and I love it when on either side, when someone says, oh, well, this guy, he did this. Of course he did. Mm-hmm. Thomas Jefferson had slaves. That's horrible. But he wrote this. Mm-hmm. He literally put down the foundation for how we're supposed to do this stuff. I don't judge people by their flaws. I admire them for overcoming them. Mm. I have to. My history, on a lot of levels is not the best.
Well, I think at the same time, you talk about admiring people for overcoming their flaws. I think on the flip side of that, we also have to be accepting of those who didn't overcome their flaws.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point. A very good point.
Who decided to remain slave owners or whatever they did in those days. We have to look at I feel like we have to look at both sides of that, because I understand the overcoming of it, but at the same time, if they fail to do that, they should be judged for that accordingly.
You're exactly right. It's very important to do that, but also, and I think, I think Bill Maher has a good perspective. I don't always agree with a lot of the things he says, and he gets really on my nerves a lot. But one of the things that I do get that he's saying is we can't judge now. We can't judge then based on what we know now.
Right.
We just really can't. We do have new information. We have learned different things. So to hold somebody from 1945 responsible for something then as opposed to what we know now, yeah, I'm still going to watch those stupid, shitty movies where women are treated, maybe not the way that we know that we shouldn't do that. Now, I like detective novels, the fact that, he calls them babes and all this stuff through all the, yeah, it does. It's like, yeah, but it's still a good story.
And we can cringe now, right? Like we can look at that. And we
man.
No.
I do.
But see, the word you used is responsible. Like they can't be held responsible for those things in 1945 or 1865 or 1798. And I agree with you because that's the way of the times. Where I draw the line, and this is a very thin line, mind you, is the difference between responsibility and celebration. And I refuse. I don't want to celebrate those people. I just don't. I understand that perhaps they're not responsible for the way they were then because it was part of the way it was. But that doesn't mean me in 2024 should be held to some kind of thing where I have to celebrate them. Like Columbus, for example.
No, of course not.
I think Columbus was a horrible human being. I don't want to celebrate
all the way down to
his
goddamn shoes. I can't stand I mean, and that's that you're exactly right. I mean, Columbus Day, come on, man. I mean, just read a little bit of history, you'll understand what a mess.
It's just the people out there that are like, well, if we tear down history, we're doomed to repeat it. And and I'm like, no, this is not about that. This is about celebrating an individual who was a bad person. Whether they knew it at the time or not is beside the point. Sure, we can't hold Robert E. Lee responsible for the way things were in 1864, but at the same time, I'm not going to celebrate the man in 2024.
You cannot.
It shouldn't work that way.
But you cannot, and that's my fear. Is that we are getting to the point where we're excusing too much. Where, even with me trying to have a balanced situation, I'm not going to have anything good to say about Robert E. Lee or Christopher Columbus. I mean, I don't care if Mussolini got the trains to run on time. I mean, he was a murderous asshole. I'm just not going to, I mean, the trains were on time, but and he had secret.
Well, hey, Jeffrey Dahmer's mother probably loved him, right?
He probably, and I don't know. So it's just, you can't, you have to understand, and I think more in my thought process, I think more of the common person, because when I think about some of the stuff, especially early on in my life, that my parents said, and then my dad became a whole lot more enlightened toward the end of his life and stuff. But when I think, I'm like, they said that out loud in front of people, and I think about it, and also, I mean, this has been a long walk for me too. I mean, I will say that, I was always kind of lucky in that I was surrounded by people that taught me that some of the values that I was hearing in my little small town might not have been the values I want to carry away with me. I was lucky.
And that's the way it is, right? When we're young, we have two choices in that situation. We either fall in line and become what they are, or we rebel against that and we become better than they were.
Well, I certainly know that as much as I try to respect people and meet, as my wife would say in her work, meet people where they are, their values are not my value.
Exactly.
Right. I'm never going to change that.
Yep.
I'm never going to change that.
Perfectly said. And man, Ray Weaver on the Boston Chris podcast. Ray, if you could tell people one last thing, we are blessed and cursed by independent thought, are we not?
Absolutely. And I mean, it's just one of those things where, what was it that John Lennon said? If I could be a fisherman, I would be a fisherman, but I just can't.
Gosh, I wish I was a toddler again, right?
Exactly. I wish I did. Sometimes I wish I could just wake up in the morning and be blissfully ignorant, but it's just not going to happen.
Set me down in the corner and tell me where to color. That's just what you got to do, please, man.
But you were never good at staying inside the lines, I can
No,
guarantee you, and neither
absolutely
was
not.
I.
But
Neither
so
was I.
people are hearing about Ray Weaver for the first time. What is the best way for folks out there to support you and everything that you do?
Well, I have you know, as you mentioned, I have weaverwrites.com, which is my website, which I promise to get a little bit better at updating and keeping things. I mean, you know, and of course, I have a social media presence, Ray Weaver on Facebook, and I have there's this. I'm an artist on Spotify. I don't know how much or how little these things matter these days, you know. But streaming, going there, listening to songs, streaming the songs, all that stuff will help. And you know, if I'm a big radio guy. If you hear something you like and you have a local station that plays indies and stuff, just get in touch with me. Let me know. And just, you know, look for me around. I get played a lot, I think, on college radio stations and stuff like that. So, you know, that's but just more than in a broader sense, you know, just support your fellow man and your fellow indie artists and people like Boston Chris that are like, you know, not doing the mainstream stuff and trying to get you past, you know, into something that you might have missed otherwise. As I said, I'm not the kind of guy that's ever going to say anything bad about any artist, whether it's Taylor Swift or whoever. It's just that there's other stuff out there.
Taylor Swift is fantastic, first of all.
You know, I love her.
Yeah,
I love her.
I don't know what's
her.
wrong with people. She very often makes my Mount Rushmore, so she's up there. With
I love
McCartney
Taylor Swift. I don't
often.
mind. My daughter, my youngest daughter, got me into listening to her back during, you know, the Tim McGraw days and all that stuff. And I just, you know, I as an artist and as a writer and as a musician and as a person, I can't find anything wrong with her. I really can't. I mean,
just writing about what she feels, right? Like that's what you're supposed to do.
I consider Folklore one of the best records I've heard in a long time.
Agreed.
So there you go.
And gosh, her new one is just as good, I feel. Maybe not just as good, but Folklore was kind of on another planet. But
yeah, it was.
But yeah, we're on the same page a lot of the time, Ray. I appreciate you coming on the show with me today or tonight.
Oh, thank you so much for taking on so much time with me, my friend. Thanks so much.
I appreciate you being patient and giving me so much time and playing a couple of songs. Again, guys, it's weaverwrites.com. I'm going to spell that out. It's on your screen, but just in case, WeaverWrites.com. We're going to make sure that is in the description below as well. That way, all you got to do is go down there, click on it, see what Ray is about, follow him on social media. I'm going to try to help Ray with his @ on Facebook as well. That way,
just get that
way he will get an @ on his Facebook. He does have a Facebook page. You guys can perhaps find him there, but we're going to try to get his @ set up. But again, Ray, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll have you on the new show in January or February. I'll get with Cliff on that as well.
All right, great. As soon as the new single's ready, I'll let you know.
All right.
Hey, y'all, this is India Ramey. Thanks for tuning in to the Boston Chris Show.